Greetings everyone, and welcome back to Awkward Analysis with Chromoid. Today we're going to be reviewing the Deathmasks, submitted by Stoic Steve. Should be a fairly straightforward review. There's only 5 of these tanks, and they're all the exact same model. So I'll just review one, and then you'll get the idea for the whole of them. We'll start with the one directly behind me, because it's the closest. Right away, you'll notice that there is a huge, mask in front of it. This is what gives the tanks their name, and also kind of defines them and their fighting style. So as you can see, we've got, of course, the cannons are out front. They are fixed, meaning that they can't actually turn. Now they can, like the mantlets. I'm gonna get a little closer. You can see here, and turn on the UI again. You can see it's a 1 meter elevation mantlet. So that means that not only can they not turn because they're not on a turret, they also have almost no side-to-side rotation. They have some. Elevation mantlets can get between 5 and 20 degrees of azimuth, or left and right swivel, with the smaller diameters giving them more azimuth and higher diameters giving them less azimuth. And since this is a 100mm gun, I would guesstimate they have around 15 degrees of what do you call that? Traverse, I guess you would say, although that's more of a track thing, of a vehicle turning thing. But anyway, yeah, they can traverse about anywhere between 12 and 15 degrees left and right. That's enough to give them the coverage they need. And if you're wondering whether or not these barrels will be, with this mask in the way the barrel's turning, it won't. From the depth physics says that the barrels are one of the few pieces, or one of the few blocks in this game that can actually clip through other blocks when they're not on subconstructs. As long as they're attached to a functioning gun, they can actually clip through any other solid block, so they can turn straight through this mask, pointing out the nose if they want to. And I've seen them actually do that. We'll look at that in a second. But that's not the main thing I want to talk about first. The main thing I want to talk about first is this mask on the front. And if you look very carefully, you'll see there's actually no. Well, there's that thing down there, but that's the only thing connecting this mask to the tank itself. It's this little hinge down here. I don't know if you can see it right there over the top of the front wheels. That block is also connecting this mask. And if I put my mouse over it, you'll notice that I'm not actually, like, if it was red, that would show that these blocks were part of the main construct because I couldn't place anything here. But it's blue, meaning that I can't place anything here simply because there's no blocks to connect to. In fact, if I go back here and go down, I get a green block. So I can actually build blocks straight out through this mask. So that tells you this is on a subconstruct. And of course that would make sense because you don't get these kind of angles without using spin blocks. So let's go ahead and look at how this is constructed. Obviously the Deathmasks are meant to engage from the front because you can see the fixed guns, the big heavy armor mask in the front. It's all meant to be a tank destroyer, sit here and fire at its opponents. So we've seen tank destroyers in other reviews, and this is nothing new. It is a different way of approaching things, though, for several reasons. First off, as you can tell, these are even less armored on the sides than like the Panzerknacker, for instance. And they only have this 1 to 2 layers. Right here, it's only 1 layer thick. It's basically 1 layer of heavy armor all the way around the front. It is a cheaper solution, so you can get 5 of these rather than the 3, just the 3 Jagdpanzers that were on the Panzerknacker team. But it's a little bit of a cheaper approach, and it does help to keep just keep the cost down. The other thing, though, and again, this is me theorizing, but I suspect because of the way explosives work, and like I said, could be theory crafting because it could be the sole reason for building it like this was because he wanted to make a tank destroyer and he wanted to do something cool and thematic, so he made a death mask and put it on the front, and that's just how it came out. But I wonder also if Stoic Steve built it this way to kind of abuse explosive mechanics. So if you don't know, let's recap real quick. Explosives are kind of funny in From the Depths. If they hit a block that's on the main hull, they will only the explosion will only affect other blocks that are attached to the main hull. Now that does include spin blocks, but it doesn't include the blocks that are on the spin block. So you'll see this a lot with turrets. If you've watched, for example, Minty's Battleship Brawl, and Evil for Zerging did cover this. In fact, that's how I know about this, is Evil for Zerging covered this in his own review. But the mechanics basically say there was a turret and the explosive hit directly underneath the turret, but it impacted the hull. The explosion would run along the hull, run underneath the turret and around the turret, but even inside the hull around in the turret well. But unless it hit the spin block, it would not affect the turret at all. Now, nothing else in From the Depths works this way, except for maybe EMP, which is pretty easy to understand because EMP just touches all adjacent blocks. But yeah, that's how explosives work. So conversely, if you hit the subconstruct, or the spin block, or anything on the spin block, it will only affect blocks on the spin block. So it can run, if it hits, say, the front of the turret. Oh, and the other thing, yeah, if it hit the front of the turret, it would basically only affect blocks on that turret. It could go down to where the hull is, but it would go underneath the turret rather than hitting the turret itself. The other thing, and this has to do with how explosions propagate in From the Depths, but basically when an explosion develops, or it begins, the rules of the game say the explosion, or the explosive damage, if you will move outward from the point of impact or detonation, and it cannot come back towards the point of detonation. So no matter which direction it goes, if it tries to at any point make a move that will bring it back towards the direction of the origin of the explosion, it won't. So in that turret instance, if it hit the front of the turret, it could go down, and then it could go underneath the turret, because that's away from the point of origin, which is the front of the turret. And if there was no armor back there to stop it, it could run all the way back to the juicy internals of the turret, because again, it ignores the hull because it hit a subconstruct. All this to say, I wonder if this mask is here to prevent really big explosions, 28 meters that could reach all the way to the back of his tank, from really doing anything, because heavy armor is the absolute counter to all explosive devices. Even cram explosions, the massive 23,000 damage explosions you can get off of cram cannons are 50,000. It's incredible what you can get off of cram cannons, and it would do very little to the setup unless it had some large kinetic damage behind it. So yeah, explosives would do nothing to this shell. It would not touch these barrels. Barrels are really fragile, and explosives have a nasty habit of clipping them off. So these would be unharmed because they're not part of the subconstruct. And also, all the rest of this tank would be saved. The explosion could cover the entire tank, and nothing would be affected except this mask. And of course, even if it blasted through the mask, it's still not going to touch anything behind it because of the way the From the Depths physics work. I could be wrong. It could be Stoic Steve had none of that in mind. He just wanted to create a really fancy mask, and he can only do that by placing a subconstruct to get this angle. But whether he did or not, I suspect that's going to be a very useful thing, because against some of the very high explosive cram cannons we have in this tournament, this will be very effective. At least I assume so. I could be talking out of my ass again, but you never know. Anyway, that's it for the mask. And if you're wondering how he did this, I shrunk it earlier, but I didn't really explain. The thing he is attaching it is a 3x3 Omni mantlet, which is a gun mantlet. It's the largest one you can have, and it looks a little something like this. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Just like that. It gives you the most azimuth and elevation of any of the mantlets. There are specialized elevation mantlets that give you more elevation, but it's the best all-rounder. It's also the largest, so it's really hard to fit into a lot of designs without getting a lot of space. It also costs the most, but it also provides the most armor. If we look at it here, 3,150 health, 20 armor. All the rest of these, 12 armor, 15 armor, 15, 12. This has the most health and armor of all the other mantlets. So it's very, very hard to get through this thing. It's a good protector. You kind of use it as a shield if you want to, but it also costs a lot. 160 versus all the others put together. In fact, it's almost costs more than the others put together. At 70, 120. Yeah, it's just a little cheaper than using all these other mantlets at once on a single tank. So there's a trade-off for it. You can see down here he's got the spin block. He's got a couple of these little angled blocks on the sides to give a little protection to the spin block right here. You don't want it getting snapped off accidentally, so he's got layers of sloped blocks back here to keep it safe. And then, of course, underneath it, we have, if you can see it right there, an automatic control block, or ACB. And basically, it just starts, it activates every half second, but basically, it just keeps the rotation locked in place. Honestly, all you need to do is go in here, say activate on spawning, and then set your degrees, and it would automatically kick the spin block to this position, and it would never change. But, that works too. That's usually made, that setting though, every 0.5 seconds, it's usually made to reset other settings given by other automatic control blocks. That's enough about the mask. Let's move on to the steering. This is another vehicle that uses traditional car steering, and we have 4 turning wheels in the front, and in the back we have, that looks like 8 power wheels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they're all power wheels. So 8 power wheels in the back. So not a lot of engine power required to move this thing. And obviously, it's probably not going to move very fast. A big, heavy armor mask in the front, a ton of gun inside of it, and the rest is all metal. So it's probably not going to be very speedy. But then again, when you're a tank destroyer, you don't need to be particularly fast unless that's in your MO to begin with. And that's just not going to be really what this design is all about. This design is really all about the gun, and there are 2 of them. Now, it is kind of compact for a gun, especially for 2 guns. And yes, I know they're twin-barreled, I know they're 100 millimeters, but still, that's pretty doggone compact. That's very impressive. It is a small caliber gun, one of the smallest I've seen. I think Pirate Battalions is pretty small. We've seen some small calibers, but this is the smallest main armament I've seen. Not the smallest, but one of the smallest main armaments I've seen in this game so far. And interestingly enough, I think it's honestly the most effective one I've seen so far. Very rapid firing guns. As you can tell, he's maximized the cooldown. Those are all cooldown blocks right there. So the gun will recover from its from the recoil of firing very, very quickly. We'll test all that out in a second. You can see up here we have belt-fed autoloaders all down the side of this thing. Clips there, clips there. That is how many? Oh gosh, there's a ton of them here. Let's count them all. Let be like the count from Sesame Street. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 build-feed autoloaders. That's a lot of autoloaders, and I'm just gonna say there is no way he's ever going to be able to fire those. That many autoloaders being belt-fed and all, there's no way he's ever going to be able to cool down his gun fast enough to keep up with this. This is basically machine gun levels right here. No, I'm sorry, this is chain gun levels of fire rate here. Very impressive. Not only that, he has 2 of these things. This is a duplicate on the other side here. These are the exact same gun. So 4 barrels firing at God knows how much. Let's see, 800 rounds per minute. There we go. He could effectively despawn. If there was another team with a similar fire rate, there's a chance they could end up despawning some of their shells midair, because the game can only handle, was it 500 projectiles at once? Any more than that in the air at once are going to start getting despawned or removed. They won't exist anymore because the game can't handle them. So that might be an issue. I never made a rule about it because I really never considered it, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't his intention. He's not trying to cheese people. He was just trying to maximize fire rate here, but that actually could be a legitimate concern with this design if it came up against another very spammy version. We have smoke blocks in here too, so he obviously doesn't want these things getting hit by missiles, and I can understand why. Missiles are one of the few things that could surprise him from the sides or even from the top if they happen to arc up very high. Not a huge danger of that, because they're all required to be horizontally launched unless they're dumbfire missiles, in which case you really don't want to launch them vertically anyway. But yeah, he definitely just wants to try to mitigate laser-guided missiles being able to hit his tanks. If they're dumbfired, there's nothing you can do about them anyway except armor up and take the hits like a man. But laser-guided, there's something you can do. So he's put smoke in there, and you might have seen it already going off once or twice. Sorry about that. I can't control that. I've shut them off, and they still do that automatically. I don't know why. I thought that... I don't know. Smoke seems to be a little bugged lately. But anyway, we have target prioritization algorithm card. Let's take a look at this real quick. So, definitely don't shoot the farthest thing. Shoot the closest thing. Speed and altitude are standard, as you might expect. Engine, propulsion, blah blah blah. Creeper player, not really relevant. Value per weapon. Okay, so I don't know if he's really adjusting anything. In fact, I'm going to reset this to default and see. No, okay, so it's just a default TPC, target prioritization card. I'm sorry. And basically, all it is he's just slapped it in there to make sure they shoot the closest thing, and preferably the thing with the most guns. And you know, if all that is equal, they'll shoot the thing with the most blocks. Probably could have tweaked this to make them more effective. I know in the fight they had against the front runners, targeting that large moving brick of death that ended up taking out most of them would have been preferable because, well, I mean, they made good choices regardless. I think they took out what they needed to take out, but at the end they really should have focused fire on the metagame a little bit more than they should have. But you know, that is what it is. Some people don't like messing with the settings; they just slap them on and they work. I don't know. Uses a land algorithm movement. It's pretty much set for them to charge. So basically, enter broadside below this range. So basically, they're meant to charge straight at an enemy no matter what. That basically says if you are outside 3,000 meters, you should be facing the enemy and moving towards them. Idle approach distance, broadside minimum range. No, this is a naval AI. I am sorry, it looked like a land. No, it is. Card, land AI. Naval AI. Right. Okay, this is an old version of the game because that's what we had when the tournament was launched. But I think that's a bug. I'd never noticed that before. Anyway, but there is a. You'll notice there's depth permitted on tanks. Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, it might be useful if you don't want them going in water. But anyway, nominal broadside minimum range. I don't know. That shouldn't be naval. Land movement. Whatever. Basically, though, they should not allow them within 100 meters. So if they get below 100 meters from the enemy, they should stop or reverse or whatever. That's pretty much it for this tank. You can see there 100 horsepower for the engine. Nothing special. I'm not sure why there's a laser emitter. I think that's a relic. Shouldn't be there. We do have a laser warner. Only one, as he should, because it'll see everything within 20 meters, and pretty much if a laser is hitting this tank anywhere, this will find it. It's also in the back. So while the back is kind of, you can see it's very thinly armored, it's not expected to be engaged from the back. So if it's being engaged from the back, it's done something wrong. Let's finally, before I test this thing, let's look at the shell. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gunpowder casings, a solid, and a sabot warhead, and a sabot head on the top. This is a 100 millimeter gun, so let's bring that down to 100 millimeters, shall we? There we go. Alright. You can see he only needs a 1 meter shell rack. He's got optimal barrel length is 9.2 to burn all the propellant. He only needs half of that to get the accuracy, to get like a 1 degree of accuracy. And a very high muzzle velocity, about 720 meters per second. That's pretty good velocity, so it won't be hard to aim these things. Now, you won't have to give a lot of lead, which cuts down the amount of work that the detection system has to do. Expected reload time for none of this is relevant. He's using way too many belt-fed autoloaders for any of this to be relevant. But basically, it should reload from the clip to the autoloader within 4.43 seconds without any extra assistance. He's put enough on there to make this irrelevant, though. Recoil force is going to be an issue. 18,000 per shot, and he's firing supposedly 800 of these per minute. That's going to add up. He's going to need, this is the point where you have to consider how much you're going to invest in your engine and wheels, because we've seen some entries already where this is a problem. They have amazing guns, and you would think they really don't need that many wheels because they're just meant to kind of fire and kind of just sit there and unload. But when you can't really sit there in this game, when wheels have the amount of friction has about as much friction as my worn out sneakers on ice, and they basically have to be moving forward constantly just to counteract the recoil. So 8 wheels may not be enough to counteract the recoil, although I think they were in the match. But still, you got to consider that when you have this kind of recoil with the fire rate that you got, it's just something you got to look at. How much am I going to invest in my engine power to make sure this thing doesn't get knocked out of bounds by its own cannons? And that's pretty much it. We've got no. I have one thing back here. Was that it? I think that's, yeah, okay. I see, yeah, 200. Okay, there's only 200 ammunition on this. Granted, every shell requires what? 28 ammunition to build. So, yeah, basically within 10 shells, he's run out of ammunition. And I don't see any ammo producers. So, he really could have just gone without the ammunition, honestly. I really think that if he was going to go this route, put so little ammunition on his tanks, and then not give any ammo makers, or whatever you call them, the ammo factories on here, he could have just gone without the ammunition, because it makes his tank significantly less explodey. Granted, as soon as one of these autoloaders get hit, the whole thing's going up in a ball of fire anyway, so maybe it's just a moot point, and he wanted a little bit of reload capability if he really came to that. But with as many shells as he's got preloaded in this thing, I would say that's not an issue. Every clip carries 20 shells. I said what? 21, 17, something like that? Yeah, 17, what is it? 17 or 19? Let's say 19. 19 autoloaders times 21 is a lot. 100 and 180, 198, close to 200 basically. 200 shells. Yeah, yeah, he's not going to. No, I'm sorry. What am I saying? 19. That's 360. So basically 370 shells in each gun. If he runs out of shells before he's killed all his opponents, he probably wasn't going to win in the first place. But that's pretty much it for this tank. We'll go ahead and test it out. And I have a nice little seat up here. We do have a rangefinder and a camera, so that should be all he needs really. And if they share, it'll be even better. But I'm not going to talk about that anymore. We're just going to slap these down, test out the speed, test out the impressive guns, and then that should conclude this. I have probably taken way more time than I ever planned to discuss Deathmasks. I apologize. I really was going to make this concise, and then I just rambled on. But apparently that's what some of you guys like anyway, so I guess win-win. Let's fire this thing up. Oh, now you'll see he's put a jet on the front to give it downforce. I'm not sure it needs it, but then again, it is really top heavy. Maybe these rear wheels could cause it to tip back a bit. I don't know. It is what it is. It will definitely do its job because it moves so slow. 17, just 17 meters per second. Kind of moving up towards 18, but that's about it. There we go. I was turning it the wrong way. Okay, that's why he's got the jet, just to make sure it will stick to the ground. It does tend to make it bob forward a bit because it tips like that, and then it loses momentum because it's tipped up and the rear wheels are no longer touching the ground. But regardless, that's okay. Turn back the other way. Oh, and you can see it snaps a lot when it does that. They tend to rock when they do this, and that's because they're so top heavy. Very, very slow tanks, easily flanked. You could kill them very quickly, but if you had a fast and agile tank, as we've seen many entries have. But that's not the that's not really what they're meant to do anyway. What they're meant to do is sit still and do this. And what better way to test out fire rate than on your own tanks, huh? You see here, I turn it like that. It's got some azimuth. Whoa. That's what's happened. I didn't reverse all the way. It's got a little bit of twist in the guns. Come on, show it. Here, hold on. You got a little bit of twist in the guns. They can angle a little bit and then they snap back. So they can kind of traverse a little bit, but not much. They're much better at going up and down. Even then, they're not much. The elevation mantlets aren't much. Wait, were they placed sideways? Let me look at this real quick. That's why. Okay. So, because Omni mantlets, he wanted 1 meter mantlets, obviously. I'm sorry I forgot. I know we were going to test it. I wanted to point this out, though. I saw elevation mantlets. I was thinking, well, he's not going to need them to go up and down much. He wants them to go side to side. And he did. But instead of using the Omni mantlet, which only gives you between 10 and 30 degrees of azimuth, he used the elevation mantlet, which gives you only between 5 and 20 degrees of azimuth, but it gives you between 20 and 40 degrees of elevation. So he's turned them sideways. And now the elevation is the azimuth. You turn them left and right, and suddenly you're using that much higher amount of elevation to go sideways, if that makes any sense. Very clever workaround. I like that. Very efficient, maximizing what you can get out of these things. But that's enough talking about technicalities and mechanics. We want to see what these do. So ready, set, unload. Not as quick on the cooldown as I thought they'd be. You know, for the amount of autoloaders you have on here, Stoic Steve, these things don't cool down fast enough. And this is what I was saying earlier. There's no way he's going to cool down fast enough to reach the true potential of all these belt-fed autoloaders. But he still has quite a good fire rate right here. And you see here, we've already chopped off most of the barrels on this poor Deathmask right here, which can severely hamper the accuracy and the speed of the shells coming out of it. It hasn't done diddly squat to the masks, though. You can see that. It could. I think it definitely could. Unfortunately, because the fire rate's so gimped, and I suspect it's because these guns don't cool down very quickly. Yeah, sure, they have a good rate of fire because of the autoloaders, but look at that. 1.45 seconds for them to cool down. And that's 2 barrels. That means that every barrel that the gun can basically fire at a sustained rate of, what was it? About 0.7 seconds. Well, 0.7 seconds. I'm sorry. It could fire at a sustained rate of one shell every 0.7 seconds. Because you fire one gun, it takes a second and 1.45 seconds to cool down, so you can fire it again. Meanwhile, the other one can go off. So if you fire it in 0.7 second intervals, that should be enough. I'm gonna test it one more time to make sure I'm not just talking nonsense here. Yeah, they're still loaded. So the problem here isn't that they don't have enough reload speed. Their reload speed is off the charts. Their cooldown isn't long enough. With this setup as is right now, you could easily go, see, 0.7, so basically 1 second. So you could easily reach a speed of, I'm going to guesstimate 200. I'm going to see how that works out for you here. I'm just going to test this one gun. Even this, not enough. Even this, not enough. So you would probably be more around the 100 level, if I had to guess. There you go. Even this, not quite sustained. You can see right there. There's a little bit of delay between the first gun firing again and the second gun. So, yeah, I think what's really lacking on this tank, and the guns in particular, to maximize the effect of all those autoloaders is more cooldown gauges. And that's got cooling vents. It's going to be hard to stick those in here. As you can see, he's already packed them jam full. Maybe he could Tetris them around the back, extend the length a little bit. They're already close to, they're already 10,110. So they're pushing that 50,000 limit. I added some parts up here, that's why they're 110. But yeah, they're pushing that 10,000 limit, so you really couldn't fit anything else on here. But it's, in my opinion, if you're going to have a slow rate of fire like that, you don't need belt-fed autoloaders. In fact, you'd be better off using regular 1-meter autoloaders, which already have a fantastic fire rate, or reload rate, especially if you're using this many of them. Or cut some of these out. You only need, in order to reach the amount of speed you're wanting to have, to reach 400 rounds per minute, you only need half, maybe even a third of the amount of autoloaders, or belt-fed autoloaders you have on here. They reduce the amount of reload time by a lot. I don't know exactly what the measurement is, but it's very fast when you use a couple of these together. You could use 4 and probably reach 200 to 300 rounds per minute, maybe 5. But, I mean, if you want more storage, then just extend the clips. And then use the rest of those resources, because, I mean, belt-fed autoloaders, 40, coolers are 20. You're using 2 coolers every time you place one of these. You could cut out half, maybe more of these and use coolers to get a really good fire rate. But as it is, it's kind of been gimped by the fact that you spend it all on autoloaders and there's no coolers to keep up with that reload rate. But in any case, it still is a good gun. It is definitely very fast firing. The burst fire there is probably going to be very devastating against lightly armored targets, or even some more heavily armored targets if you hit them in the right spaces. Good armor pierce, you'll get through most things. Heavy armor, this won't really. Again, you saw the effect on the masks was nil, but you will cut through most other armor with no problem on these things. Unfortunately, this setup, 15, 14 damage, 1,514 damage. You really need to chain gun this, and it's set up that way, but it's not working the way it's set up, I think. And that's probably going to come back to hurt this tank later on in other rounds. I won't say it's not effective. It's definitely proved itself to be effective, but it could be even more so if the issues I've mentioned were addressed. But that is okay. This is what this game is about. It's about learning, and I really, really dig the defensive part of this tank. I really like the way it's been built. I like the kind of the high explosive exploit, even if it was unintentional. I like how that is working out here. I think it will really help with the setup, especially with these barrels not getting blown off. Now, against things like fragments, of course, do not care what part of the machine it's on if they hit something or cutting it off. So fragments will blow these barrels to smithereens, but everything else, like explosives, will, unless they're heat, will pretty much not have an effect on this, and that's very, very nice. So anyway, this is pretty much the end of the review. This has been Awkward Analysis. I am Chromoid, and yeah, thank you guys for watching, and Stoic Steve, thank you so much for submitting this wonderful entry. I hope to see you again soon, man, and good luck on that battlefield. Till next time, folks, I guess I'll be here, waiting to see you again. Bye.